I wanted to go in a little more on who killed Dorothy Kilgallen. She was the famous one on What's My Line. She was also the daughter of James Kilgallen, a successful journalist born in Chicago, Illinois, July 3rd, 1913. She was particularly a journalist and famous for What's My Line, but also wrote some screenplays and was on radio and all that. But her sense of investigation, and if you watched her over the years on What's My Line, you'd think she has ESP. Very, very sharp, but has a sense of how to pick up on something. And she was died, and it's pretty much a fact. She was killed after she interviewed Jack Ruby, who killed Lee Harvey Oswald, who was the supposed assassin of JFK, John F. Kennedy, in 1963, November. But you're looking at all the facts. People will say she wasn't killed, and I've read that, and I know the father probably thought otherwise, but publicly he said that was the first heart attack that Dorothy had. But I don't think he really could have said much because the powers that be were very strong. So on What's My Line, that's where she appeared. That's where she's most famous for. She was a fearless journalist who broke many major stories and was the only reporter to interview Lee Harvey Oswald's killer, Jack Ruby. That was her biggest case yet, investigating President John F. Kennedy's assassination, and she found a lot of fault with the official story. But that was the last one she ever pursued, and she died in November 1965 after being threatened. There's a lot of things that link up on this, and to give you an idea of how blunt this person was, on September 1959, Dorothy Kilgallen reported on the visit of Nikita Khrushchev, the Soviet dictator, for the journal American. Kilgallen created a storm when she attacked the dress sense of his wife, Nina Khrushchev, and she stated the grisliness of her attire amounts almost to a demonstration of piety. It would be difficult to find clothes comparable to hers in the waiting room of a New York employment agency for domestic help in this decadent capitalist republic. Applicants for jobs as laundresses, chambermaids, and cooks usually are far more a la mode than Russia's first lady. And she's pretty blunt. So many people complained about the article that Dorothy Kilgallen feared she would have to resign, but nothing came of it. One day she was gossiping with her friend Alan Stokes. She was asked why she did not write about in her column about another big scoop, which was regarding Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe. However, Dorothy Kilgallen broke this rule. Broke this rule when on August 3rd, 1962, she became the first journalist to refer to Kennedy's relationship with Monroe, and she actually did not name JFK because she was really identifying Robert Kennedy. So, but the twist is that she was put under pressure by somebody to write this story, and when the story broke, the following day, Marilyn Monroe was found dead. So, getting back to that, everybody pretty much knows that's not a suicide, and the mysterious things about that. But after, when she referred to Marilyn Monroe with the relationship with Kennedy, which she was actually referring to Robert Kennedy, Marilyn was found dead of a drug overdose at her Los Angeles residence. The inquiry into her death was marred by numerous unanswered questions and contradictions in the medical findings. Dorothy publicly challenged the authorities with tough questions. For instance, she wrote, if a woman described as Marilyn's housekeeper, Eunice Murray, was really a housekeeper, why was her bedroom such a mess? It was a small house and should have been easy to keep tidy. Kilgallen also wanted to know why Marilyn's door was locked that night when she usually didn't lock it. If she was just trying to get some sleep and took an overdose of pills accidentally, why was the light on? Usually people sleep better in the dark. And she also asked, why did the first doctor to arrive on the scene have to call the second doctor before calling the police? And, if the doctor would have seen that she was dead, he would call the police, not a second doctor. And so why the consultation? And why the big tab gap in such a small town? Mrs. Murray gets word at 3 a.m. and it's almost 6 a.m. before the police get to the scene. So, obviously that was a murder, not a suicide. And there's still people going around saying it was a suicide. And quite obviously it wasn't. But they basically kind of set up Dorothy Kilgallen for this. She was pressured into making this public statement. So it makes it look like Marilyn Monroe took her life. And then they pin the blame on Dorothy. You see the kind of people you're dealing with? That's my point. And at the time, most people were thinking suicide. And that is that's a shrewd maneuver, isn't it? Thinking about it. So you're getting two birds with one, well, they're getting two people with one stone. Okay? Getting two people with one stone. That was very shrewd. They have Dorothy write the article. Then 2 days later, less than 2 days later, Marilyn's dead. And it's because she's devastated at Dorothy's article. Or, so it's insinuated. So, Dorothy got set up on that one. John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas on November 22nd, 1963. Dorothy Kilgallen took a keen interest in the case and soon became convinced that Kennedy had not been killed by Lee Harvey Oswald. Dorothy had a good contact within the Dallas Police Department. He gave a copy of the original police log that chronicled the minute-by-minute activities of the department on the day of the assassination, as reflected in the radio communications. This enabled her to report that the first reaction of Chief Jesse Curry to the shots in Dealey Plaza was, get a man on top of the overpass and see what happened up there. He wasn't talking about the building. He was talking about the overpass. Very interesting right there. Now, I know that's just a lot of stuff, from a long time ago. The powers that be are very shrewd, and the whole game is fooling people. And Alex Jones ain't going to tell you what's going on. He's just stirring up the crowd. So, Dorothy Kilgallen said, began to tell friends that she was close to discovering who assassinated Kennedy, JFK. According to David Welsh of Ramparts magazine, Kilgallen vowed she could crack the case, and another New York showbiz friend said Dorothy told him in the last 2 days of her life, in 5 more days I'm going to bust this case wide open. So, aware of what happened to Bill Hunter and Jim Cloth, Dorothy handed a draft copy of the chapter on assassination to her friend Florence Smith. So on November 8, 1965, Dorothy was found dead in her New York apartment. She was fully dressed, sitting upright in her bed. The police reported she had died from taking a cocktail of alcohol and barbiturates. And here's the kicker. The notes for the chapter she was writing on the case had disappeared. And also her friend Florence Smith, who she gave a copy to here, died 2 days later. And the copy she had of Dorothy's article was also never found. So, what do you think happened, right? And then, you saw what I'm going to say it again. It was about what happened with the police. And the police basically covered this up. And there was threats on her life, and what happened was the authorities should have pinned down what was going on with her whereabouts at the time, because what happened right before that, somebody called Dorothy up, who she knew very well, because called her at the home on a Sunday night just before she left for the TV show, and made a late date with her for which she had a rush to change her wardrobe at the last minute. So she talked to somebody not long before she died, and the police never investigated that. And Lee Israel, who was writing her biography, told the magazine, ordinarily in the case of a woman's suspicious death, the police would go out and at least ask pro forma questions of people who were around her the night before. But the New York cops did nothing, absolutely nothing. The lead detective on the case, who had 6 children, abruptly resigned from the New York Police Department, and he had 6 kids. Without any pension, a short time later, he moved out of town and opened up a pricey restaurant, which I'm sure he got money for. He got the money to do that, because I'm sure this guy didn't have a lot of money stashed away, just leaving without a pension and having 6 kids. That don't add up. So they paid him, and he opened up a restaurant. He didn't do nothing about investigating what was going on. Dorothy Kilgallen was not sleeping in her normal bedroom. Instead, she was in the master bedroom, and she never occupied that room for several years. It was a big 16-room apartment in New York City, so there was another bedroom she slept in. Dorothy was wearing false eyelashes. According to Sinclair, she always took off the eyelashes before she went to bed, and you would figure that's the normal thing to do. She was found sitting up with a book, The Honey Badger by Robert Ruark, on her lap. Sinclair claims, and that's her friend, claims that she had finished reading the book several weeks earlier because she had discussed the book with Sinclair at the time. And Dorothy had poor eyesight and could only read with the aid of glasses. Her glasses were not found in the bedroom where she died. Nowhere in the bedroom at all. No eyeglasses. And Dorothy was wearing a bolero-type blouse over the nightgown. And it was claimed that she would never wear that kind of thing to go to bed. So quite obviously what happened there. There were some insinuations that it was a suicide. And, maybe it was because Marilyn Monroe committed suicide and she was the cause of it. I'm being facetious, But that's exactly how these people operate. I want to say something else here. They remember when JFK Jr. died in an airplane crash? Right? You remember that? Yeah, I know, conspiracy, right? But you remember there's a lot of people that die in airplane crashes left and right. And, it just seems to benefit certain people. But, JFK Jr. was thinking about running for senator of New York too, right? So, I don't even want to, well, I'll say a little bit about it, but, the powers that be aren't going to be taken down by a single politician. And probably not even some big investigative reporter. This lady was obviously on to something very good, and she would open up this whole case because, every time I saw her on this show, I think she had ESP. I mean, I don't know how the hell she knew stuff. Her and that guy Bennett, they're smart as anything. And, she would have figured out what was going to happen, and she would have asked the right questions. That would have been it, and the truth would have came out. But the truth is actually a lot deeper than that. The truth is that the powers that be are a lot tougher than people expect, and you're not going to be able to elect somebody to office that's going to take care of it and knock it out of the game out, like the Federal Reserve or whatever you're going to do. What's going to happen is like people are going to have to do things individually, and it's like a mass effort. If a lot of people start not using the Federal Reserve notes or whatever, because I think this is a lot to do with why John F. Kennedy was killed, a lot of people just start not complying with different things, little ways. And that's what happens in a lot of these other countries that aren't in the United States, They might have a lot of rules out there, but people sometimes just ignore them, It's all a matter of application. So, that's kind of a lot that has to do with things. I don't like the way Alex Jones works people up a lot, and he seems like sometimes I think he's trying to get people to go against things a little too hard, and then they got an excuse to do more. But if you're going to fight the system, you got to be super slick, And I guess, like in a case with this Dorothy Dorothy, you know, she's writing this stuff, she probably should have gave it to various people in her family, you know, if she didn't trust somebody to publish it on, you know, where she had a scoop on something and nobody else would know it. Because if you get it out to enough people, you know, then they're screwed. You know, then you're screwed. But keep it to yourself, you're messed up. But you know, I'm just saying that. In her case, this was definitely a murder, and it's it's something else with the Kennedy assassination, and quite obviously, you know, if they want to call this conspiracies or whatever, I call it fact. But you can see how deep everything runs. Everybody acts in their own self-interest. There is nothing that is like rigidly planned. It's usually over money. Somebody needs money, they do stuff, and they keep their mouth shut. And that's kind of how it works. So the only way you're going to really fight the beast, though, is a lot of individual efforts, and part of that is to just keep buying its silver and go ahead and do that, and then piece by piece, and that will tear up the Federal Reserve, because I think the Federal Reserve is pretty much through next anyway. It's going to be something beyond that, but I found this kind of interesting because his Dorothy, you know, it's interesting how they set her up too, in a way, because somebody was egging her on to print stories about Marilyn Monroe and Kennedy, and then 2 days later Marilyn Monroe was like killed, and they could say it's a suicide because of his revelation. That's pretty slick, you know. That's exactly how they work.